Hi, everyone. My name is Michael McGreevey, and I'm part of the Conservation Finance team with the Blue Nature Alliance. In this video, I will explain the four main types or typologies of finance mechanisms and instruments that can support marine conservation. And I would note here that we use finance mechanisms and instruments interchangeably. As we get started, it's important to note that this is a categorization system that the Blue Nature Alliance uses. There are other approaches to understanding the breadth of conservation finance mechanisms and instruments available to fund MPAs. This is one way to simplify things into four main categories that we find useful for practitioners. The first category here are grant-based mechanisms. This is where the source of financing seeks to have positive environmental impacts, but they're not seeking a financial return. Typically, that would be something like philanthropy or official development aid that most of us are familiar with. The second category is compensation-based instruments, where we're seeking voluntary or compulsory compensation for negative environmental impacts. That might include something like blue carbon offsets, for example. The third category is investment-based instruments, where the source of financing is seeking environmental impact, but they're also seeking a financial return. They want to get their money back, and ideally with some return beyond that. This would include things like blended financing approaches, where we're seeking to get financial returns through investment in conservation-related activities. The fourth category are ecosystem value-based instruments, where we're seeking to tap into a sustainable source of ecosystem value. That includes things like entrance fees. In this chart, we provide you with a menu of options in terms of sustainable financing instruments for marine conservation areas. This chart contains a lot of information, which is further simplified in this toolkit. On the left-hand side, we have grouped financing instruments into the four categories that I just mentioned. We've also done a high-level assessment or ranking of each instrument across 5 criteria: their potential for large-scale funding, potential to attract additional funding, maturity, ease of operationalization, and adaptability. You can see the ranking key in the top right corner of the table. A dark blue circle indicates a high ranking, a half blue circle indicates medium, and a gray circle indicates a low ranking. I would note that what we mean by maturity here is whether this is an instrument that's been around for many years and has a proven track record, or whether it's something that's relatively new and experimental. In the right-hand column, you'll see some preconditions for MPA funding that relate to those specific instruments. What needs to be in place for one of those instruments to work in a given marine conservation context. Finally, the gray, blue, and green bars to the left of each instrument represent whether an instrument has been established in the marine conservation context, gray, is emerging for marine conservation, blue, which means that we have a few examples to point to already, or that has been tested for other types of conservation in green, but does not yet have much of a track record in the marine context. I realize that the details in this chart may be hard to see while watching this video, so I invite you to pause and take a closer look before continuing on, or explore the toolkit web pages. Although there have been challenges associated with some of the more established financing mechanisms for marine conservation, we do think that tailwind opportunities exist to support growth in these existing mechanisms. For example, the increasing focus on climate change and the importance of the blue economy are directing more and more attention and resources to domestic government budget allocations. Eco-taxes, a tax levied on activities which are considered to be harmful to the environment, are seeing increasing social acceptance. More and more countries are considering green taxes or adopting polluter pays principles, which is leading to greater familiarity with and acceptance of these ideas. There are now many examples of these mechanisms around the world, and it's becoming more common to have these types of environmental taxes, like the carbon tax in Colombia. Finally, when it comes to ecosystem value-based mechanisms and instruments, it's worth mentioning that the global trend and interest in ecotourism does not seem to be abating at all, and we expect that to continue and to offer opportunities to tap into that source of financing for marine conservation areas.